order. Ask everyone to not if you're driving, but other than that, if you're able to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with
liberty, and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And I will make a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda as stated. Can I get a second?
Second.
No second.
Second by Mr. Loyer. Roll call. Sorry, any discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood? Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
There you go. Thank you. And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move to the community open forum. I don't know if there's anyone from the community that is looking to speak to the board on the topic. If you are, now's the chance to speak up, in which case I will ask your name and topic, or you can type it in the chat window. It's up to you. So we'll give that about 5 seconds if you're interested in speaking. All right. We're going to move right into items to be approved. I will make a motion to accept item D in its entirety, which is personnel, non-instructional, and instructional. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fishman, I believe, right?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Any discussion on item D?
Hey, this is Mrs. Sundet.
Yes,
I just
ma'am.
had a question on, because not really any question, no objection to any of it. I just had a question of, are we doing something different with custodial staff this summer? There's no summer school and the building is down.
Well, I can jump in and then Paul can follow up. We still have capital project work, and they're going to be in and out constantly of doing construction work, which is obviously going to be needed for our custodians. But Paul, if you want to jump in, anything else to further answer that?
Yes, plus we're cleaning up after everybody that does come into the building. So we still have clerical coming in occasionally, pretty regularly actually in the offices. So we're cleaning up after them every day. And we still have our full summer routine to do on top of clean up after the construction project with all the dust and dirt that's going on there, trying to keep it popped up.
They do a lot of project work too, right, Paul? I assume floors and.
Yes, absolutely. We do quite a bit. We've been doing quite a bit of work on the rifle range, and we do quite a bit all year long. We're doing some extra stripping floors, and we got classrooms to move. We're trying to get the rooms ready at Millet Hawk so we can move the teachers back from CSI back to that building. So we're quite busy. We got all the smart boards to move, so we'll help in that process.
Okay, so no change from normal then, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Make a motion for item E, the consent agenda. Can I get a second?
Second, McCarthy.
Second by Mr. McCarthy. Open it up for discussion. This is the recommendations from special education and the approval of the memorandum of agreement extension with the CSSD. Any discussion or question on that? All right, being none, we'll move to vote. Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Sunday,
Yes.
Mrs. Loyer, Mr. Loyer, geez, I'll be all right.
She's in the other room. You want me to get her?
Might help, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Patch,
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood, and Mr. Hoyt.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, move into our special presentations to the board. I'll turn it over to Tom on this one.
Okay, so we have Turner, and I don't believe I see King and King right now.
Oh, we're here.
Oh, there he is. Kirk, how are you? So I will turn it over. Basically, they're going to be giving an update on obviously, phase 1, phase 2, and the security project and where we're at. So at this point, I will turn it right over to them.
Great.
All right.
Sorry, Tom, are you sharing the presentation or no? I'm just asking to make sure if I'm supposed to see it or not.
Oh, that is a great question. So, Connie, you have it in front of you? You're on
You're
mute.
muted, Connie.
I was trying to protect from the dogs. Yeah, give me co-host capability. I can go in and pull it up. It's just a link.
There you go. You're on. You got co-host ability. Done.
Hey, Andy,
Yes, Mike.
how come your image is backwards behind you?
Oh, thank you. See, important to know. I'll flip it. Thank you, sir.
Let me bring up the agenda first. Hang on one second. I wasn't expecting that. Actually, it says you keep sharing. Are you stopping can you bring up the agenda, Tom?
I'm just worried too now. Hold on a sec. Hold on.
It's a shame we're going to get back to live meetings because we're just figuring all this stuff out.
Hold on. Bear with me.
I got it, Tom.
I just pulled it up, but you got it?
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
There it is.
All right.
There you go.
Pat, kick it off.
All right. Connie, can you go to the next slide?
Maybe. There we go.
All right. So under the construction update for the technology project, we're bringing that to a close. That's being closed out this month. And in there, we've done new data racks and new cabling throughout the building in support of the new VoIP system that went in across the district. And that was PV Moore, the maintenance center, the stadium, middle school, transportation center, Brewerton Elementary, A. Cole, Millard Hawk, and Hastings, Mallory, and CSI all had those upgrades done. So that's behind us. So phase 1, the high school work is about 77% complete. We're continuing the roof replacement, which is the last building. Millard Hawk elementary work was completed last fall and into the fall of the year there. Middle school roof work was completed for phase 1. Wasn't much, mostly masonry pointing. Brewerton Elementary, the work for phase 1 was completed as well as Cole and Hastings Mallory. Phase 2 update. All right. High school, we're about 63% complete. Work to complete is the auditorium renovation, band and chorus room renovations, which have been demoed. Boilers are demoed out. We were able to do the gymnasium floor, and that work is ongoing right now. Brewerton Elementary, 32% complete. We have fin tube and unit ventilators being installed with locker room that are downstairs on each side of the gym. Those are being demoed for some abatement issues, and we'll put new ceilings in those. Middle school, about 82% complete. Chiller's going to get started up. Actually, I think we started it since we put this together, and that seems to be moving along. The few fin tube coil replacements are happening there. That's going well. Sorry, I just Miller Hawk is about 89% complete. Terrazzo flooring is in. We're doing the polishing and finishing with landings and things like that, so that's looking great. Exterior windows are moving along, and the exterior ephes is moving along. AA Cole, we're about 84% complete. There's some work with the boilers. They've been running since last fall. There's some tweaking there. And then the cafeteria floor that got demoed, and we're going to be putting a new floor in the cafeteria.
Hey, Pat.
AA Cole, yes, sir.
Sorry, this is Andy Martin. Just
Hi,
any question or concern as far as timing on any of it? Everything on track, or do you anticipate any challenges with the timing?
Right now, we're running on track with things. We did have a couple COVID-related shipping concerns, and it looks like they're going to work out. It might have put us into, the second week of September with a couple items, but we're thinking that's going to work itself out. So right now, we're pleased with where things are, and with us getting a jump, we are much further ahead in some of the areas, and some of the other areas we are ahead as well. So it's good news all the way around as far as we're concerned, to be able to get in there and do what we're doing right now. Hastings, Mallory, we're about 86% complete. The floor is down. I think we're just going to do some base in there yet, and that'll take care of that building. So from a construction standpoint, things are going well. And with that, on the phase 2 update, I'm going to turn this to Kirk to talk about the security project and where we are.
Hello. So last time we did a presentation, I just checked my calendar because I couldn't even remember. It was March 9th on Monday. And I distinctly remember going through the schedule that we had on the table for over a year with bidding this project in March. And I remember Andy distinctly asking me, so what happens if SED has a snag with all that's going on? And my response was, we'll have to roll with the punches because it's never happened before, but you don't know what's going to happen. And so the proverbial wheels fell off the bus, and we got approval with our third-party review at the end of March, as expected. However, at that point, the project went back to SED, and at the time it went back to SED, it went into a black hole, of which many of us, including Tom and others, sent requests into SED to get it out of that black hole. In the meantime, the facility director, Roseanne Groff, and one of their senior project managers decided they were going to retire in April, which was a surprise to everybody, and so it put them further behind. So in any case, it took us a little over a month to get any response out of them to get back on track, and so that's pretty much what we used the beginning of May to do. We finally got SED approval, and now we're in the process of bidding with bids due on June 30th. So over the course of the last 6 months, we have been meeting regularly amongst the school district and Turner and us to try and figure out a game plan and schedule based on this much later period of bidding. And it ends up being about 3 months later than we wanted to be bidding, but it is what it is, so we're rolling with it. In any case, there's been a phasing plan that's been developed with everything getting, or at least proceeding with a positive bid in mid-July. And we're looking at being able to do a continuum of work over the course of the next school year, particularly in the office areas and other places where we can move folks around for short stints to continue the work. So I wish I had a better update on how we arrived at this point in time, but it is, unfortunately, given all the circumstances in the world, what we had to deal with, and we're dealing with it.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Kurt.
Any questions from the board? I have a question, but it's not particularly related to our existing project, so I'm just going to save that in case someone else has one related to these projects. I'll open it up to the board. All right. Well, then I'll just go ahead. So, Kirk, I was just wondering, in my business, not related to this, but in other states, a lot of the work that's being done to prepare for, dealing with this, with COVID and social distancing and all that, there is an ability to basically treat it like a capital project and get funding. So, as an example, districts that have purchased a tremendous amount of acrylic panels to keep a clear, viewable space between students, but to create a space between students, things like that. Is there any discussion in New York about giving that ability, or is anything we currently do just on our own dime?
Well, so the short answer to that is anything that you do is on your own dime. Unfortunately, the state of New York works very slowly. And so good case in point, when all of the guidelines have come up about separation and distancing, one of the first reactive points was to create and use acrylic and PVC panels to provide those separations. After about a month of many school districts trying to purchase that product, they got a cease and desist order from the New York State Department of Education that said that that material did not meet the flame spread and smoke development ratings for those materials in New York, and they wouldn't allow their use. And so any district that was using those materials would have to either remove them or proceed at their own risk, which this is what we're up against, unfortunately. The different departments of the state are not in lockstep, and I would love to see the day that they coordinate things a little bit more proactively, but that's absolutely not the case. So we've had several districts that have contemplated proceeding with what they term to be an emergency project to try and force the issue. And SED recently came out and said that it doesn't fit the rules of an emergency project. So again, you're proceeding at your own risk.
All right, thank you. Well, I guess
that doesn't mean that just to point out, that doesn't mean that once all the dust settles that there isn't some avenue for the governor's office to work with SED to provide funding. But as of right now, there isn't, and there's no quick resolution to that. And so given we have basically 2 months of summer left before school starts, I don't see anything changing significantly enough for anybody to be able to do much work.
Right. Yep. All right, thanks. Any other questions from the board?
What is Tom doing?
Yeah, he looks like he's dancing.
Tom, are you dancing?
You want this down?
What is he doing?
I think he's walking with his computer, but it's just with the background. It's making his movements look very jerky.
Medication time, Tom.
I just don't even know.
Sorry about that. I'm back.
So any more for Pat or I?
Not for me. We have our own internal issues to deal with. No,
Dancing Tom.
Thank you, Kirk and Pat.
The good thing is the projects are going well and we're getting work done, so we're proceeding.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
No problem. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well,
Okay.
all right. Moving on to reports, unfinished business. And I thought, and maybe not, but Tom, is there any, does the census need to stay on there? Will there be
No,
any updates?
You can take it off. They came and they gave me a whole bunch of brochures and stuff that I'm going to be giving out tomorrow at free and reduced, because they thought it was a great idea, because we have that American Dairy Association is going to be giving out 4,000 gallons of milk. And so they're like, give it out to anybody that comes. So I'm going to be there early, and I'm going to stay until 3:30 until that is done. So you can take it off.
All right. Excellent. So Pearl, if you could just note that, we'll remove it.
I will, thank you.
All right. Mrs. Fishman, any topics or things to bring up?
Andy, we talked, I think, late last week about a potential concern with respect to how we're going to handle going forward, that there's been some, obviously the spring sports didn't happen, and some of the coaches for some of those sports put in work year round, and whether, you know, whether there's a issue with their contract, their pay, you know, if they get paid for that time, and whether we were going to make any changes in the future with respect to, you know, knowing this now could happen, if we should make any changes. I mean, not just for the coaches, but for any of the positions, you know, that were
Right.
impacted by something like this, and knowing it could come back again. You know,
Yep.
should we make any amendments to contracts? Because I mean, I just want to make sure everyone's being treated fairly. If people are doing work and putting time in, and it's expected of them, and it's part of their job, you know, they should be getting paid for it. So.
Right.
jump
and
in, Andy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, and Chrissy, so I did, thank you for bringing it up, because I forgot to have it added, but I did prep Tom for that conversation and told him that we would bring it up tonight. So yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Sure. So I'll bring you back to when we didn't know if we were going to have spring sports. And the decision that was made and that was communicated to the athletic director, Jim Janzak, and communicated to the coaches was that if we opened up and it was safe to be able to have, you know, spring sports, if they were going to have spring sports, that we were going to pay them, instead of a prorated, we were going to give them their full compensation. Even if it was a 3-week, even if it was significantly, you know, cut in half, because many of us coach varsity sports and we know how much more stress that would be added on. It'd be basically games all the time. It doesn't add to their, you know, their overall workload, but what we were going to do is we were going to still pay them in full. And I was told that was more than agreeable. It didn't happen. And if it didn't happen, they weren't going to get paid. And that was the whole thought process. But then I had another conversation with Jim Dranzak, and this really applies to the varsity coaches that have, you know, I coach varsity sports. You're lifting with the kids, you're running things in the off season and whatnot. So the way Jim and I figured it out for next year is to have something delineated in their contract, because they're all 1-year contracts, but basically says, okay, the regular season, let's say, is, you know, 90% of what you're already getting paid. 10% of that will be those other duties that we feel are required if you're going to be a varsity coach and you're going to have a program. So he is working on that, what it looks like. It's not paying them additional money, but it's that safeguard that if COVID-20 were to ever happen, God forbid, they would have it in their contract that they would be compensated for that time. And that's what some districts have in their contracts. No district in Oswego County is paying for spring sports because it's not in their contracts, but there are some in Onondaga County that have already done that, and it's delineated. So we're going to move forward with that for next year.
But Tom, part of, I know the feedback from different places, and when I say feedback, part of what's been talked about, and so if you can clarify would be great for everyone, is if for whatever sport that's out there, there is a written kind of description about what that, what the details of that duty should entail, right? And I just want to make sure that we are setting it up correctly, in that we're hearing that what is written on a paper is not necessarily 100% what is covered, for instance, when they take the position. The rumor is additional duties are being discussed and expected that may include outside of the quote season. And so if anything like that exists, I assume you'd agree, everything should be reflected in the job description. It should never, and I'm sure the union would agree too, everything that is expected should be written down. So I'm just looking for confirmation on that. Or
No, I agree with you. I could just say it never was in any district that I've worked at, and I've coached varsity sports. Let's say Casanova, I was the head hockey coach. They never said, Tom, you're going to be doing summer lifting, you're going to be running with the kids, and that's out of season. But they told me what my pay was, but they said all that's expected. So to your point, and it's what I had said before, I agree, let's spell it all out. Because then if something like this were to happen, we can say, okay, you fulfilled this, this, and this. It is clearly listed on there. You don't get additional money, but you would be paid as part of your money since the main season, you know, didn't happen. So yes, I tasked Jim Dranzak is going to figure that out. And this is really just with the varsity coaches to be able to figure out what it takes for their program, what the expectation is, So then if auditors were to say, okay, they got that 10%, what exactly did they do? We can then pull that up and say, okay, for football, here it is. For other sports, here's. But again, I want to be very clear. If some of them are running camps and they are paid for separately, because it used to be that money was directly to them. The auditors came in. I think that was interim Jeff Bryant. When he was interim superintendent, he put a kibosh to all that and said, whoa, this isn't right. So we actually pay those coaches a rate. The district does. And so if that's the case, I don't want to hear coaches then saying, well, I did a lot in the offseason. That's true. We're gonna explain what you did, because running camps that you're being already paid for outside of your normal salary is going to be obviously not be part of that. But I think you and Chrissy hit a good point. We're going to list those duties, when they are going to be accomplished throughout the year, and go from there.
Hey, Tom,
You're
I have a
muted,
question.
Christy. You're muted.
And so to be clear, and it may not apply to every varsity sport, but that's kind of the thing I was thinking of. There's certainly big sports that, I see out on the field, or I see, picking up the kids at school, see them out practicing in the off season. And so to the extent that is expected, which I would assume all of our varsity coaches are expected to build their program. And so to that extent, I think, if they've put that time in, obviously this year has come and gone, and it was very unexpected in emergency fashion, things change and things are happening. But going forward, to the extent we're expecting, for instance, the football coach to have summer practices and, do things in the spring and workouts in the wintertime and stuff like that, then yes, that should be, I think, spelled out. Maybe not to the degree of what they need to be doing, but, even just so much to say that there will be, work done in the off season, and that will account for whatever the percentage that you guys think it is, of their stipend for coaching.
I agree with you. And it's a long conversation I had with Jim Dranzak, because it goes the other way as well. For instance, if Cuomo says there can be nothing over the summer, that's a huge part of double sessions and whatnot is the responsibility. The bulk of practices for a varsity coach, because I did varsity football as well, takes place over the summer. So then would they not get that part because they're not going to be doing it? All of that has to be listed in that job description, to your point.
And
but I think I'm not trying to create a mountain out of a mole here is what I'm saying. So to the extent, like if you're saying, well, double sessions in the summer is worth 3% and weightlifting in the winter is worth 3%. And, I'm just saying, with respect to what's already happened and what we've seen, there's obviously spring sports, some of which may not do any work in the off season, in which case that they would have 0% attributed to that. But to the extent, for instance, lacrosse, if they had fall ball and they did practices twice a week or whatever it was in the fall, or baseball had, practices or tournaments and stuff that they did as a group to just keep their skills up or improve their skills, they put all that work in already this year, and then without a season, they got paid nothing for any of that work. And so I just want to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. And going back, if we did open up with 2 weeks and they did play, then they would have gotten full pay for the whole season.
I hear you.
But we're never going to go back to that. We won't go back to that again. I'm agreeing with you guys. We're going to stipulate what those things are. And if those varsity coaches did hit those things, if their season is ever cut short like this, they would be compensated for whatever that percentage is. And I've tasked Jim Dranzak at his next Section 3 meeting to find out what other percentages, how other districts are already doing it for consistency purposes.
then, Tom, it would be, and again, this is nothing that like in the next week, but over the summer, because it wouldn't be just sports, right? I mean, and I'm not saying it applies to everything, but looking at activities in clubs and, whether it's DECA or whatever, some of them, there is work that happens outside that time, and so we can be better prepared. And then obviously there's a lot of them where it doesn't need adjustments to it. So
correct. Well, yeah. I mean, you've got field band, you've got all of those different things, marching band, all of those things that would have taken place over the summer that couldn't have. So it's not just sports, correct? It's across the board.
Right. And at the end of the day, we just want to make sure people understand that we appreciate what they do. It's not just about what's what's during the season. And so certainly there's value to all that. And I just wanted to make sure that we thought about it in the future.
There was another conversation too, and it wasn't about work that was done. It was about anticipated pay. And I don't know what to say to them. So there were coaches that said, if I would have known, and I know this for a fact, there were coaches that if I would have known that this was going to happen, I would have coached a different season to make up for that money for my retirement? I have no answer to that. It's unfortunate. It's affected everybody. Nothing we could do there, but what we can do is what you guys just talked about and really kind of delineate what those off-season things are.
This is Tim. I have one comment to it all. I would be careful getting too prescriptional in a job description first. And secondly, I think we should really contemplate, okay, if there's a season missed across the board for every sport, X% is part of the off-season duties of a varsity coach. I think we're going to get into too much minutia. That's just my personal opinion. 10% is paid out, 20%, 6%, whatever number we come up with. At the end of the day, here's the percent that if we miss another season, fall, winter, or spring, varsity coaches only get X.
Right. I tend to agree with Tim.
Yeah, I agree. I agree as well.
I just think we're going to, let's face it, football puts in a ton of work in the summer. You know what? They choose to coach football. They know that. And XYZ sport puts in less. You know, but I think we start saying, okay, football is going to be 22% is off season. You know, baseball is 6.5%. I think we're really creating a real challenge for us all, and many people included. So I think we could come up with a fair and equitable proposal that the varsity coaches can say, you know what? They appreciate what we're doing. They understand there's more work than just the season, and that's fair.
I agree, Tim. I think getting in, like you said, then you're going to start, if you're really getting down to listing everything that is expected or could be expected and assigning associated percentages, I just think you're going to get into 1% this, 1% that.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure that there's some kind of recognition and,
Absolutely.
you know, attributing some type of percentage of their pay so that if this happens again, we don't have coaches that have already put in 6 months of work and get paid nothing because their season ultimately ends up being canceled.
No doubt about it. I agree 100%.
So
yeah, I would just say I agree with what Tim and Christy said. We're going to have a plan going forward and have it be consistent, fair. But, you know, a lot of the feedback that I've gotten, you know, over the last month is, you know, are folks getting paid if they're not working? So to me, this answers the question. We've got a plan. This is the percentage. If it's canceled, it's X. If they do it half, it's X. Or if they do the whole, then they get paid full. And it just answers that whole side of that equation. So
I think we're all in agreement. Yep.
Okay.
At the end of the day, Jim Dransiak will be the one that will be checking it all out and passing it on to you for enforcing all of that.
That is correct. Yeah. But it's like what these guys just said, rather than get down to the nitty gritty, lay out what those expectations are before someone takes the job, because it's a yearly post, and then be very clear. And then if, again, you get this percentage in the off season, this percentage, and then we're done. I agree.
Right.
And my last point, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so, and similar to what Tim said, and we kind of talked about earlier, when you say laying it out, I do think that the job description needs to match what we're expecting, but I think the general consensus of the things that I've heard is that there's not any mention of off-season work in the job description. But when the discussions are had each year, it's what are you going to do to build the program? What are you going to do in the off-season? If there's an expectation, merely saying that in the job description, not necessarily spelling out what that expectation is, but just having something to the effect of, you know, there's an expectation that you will build, you know, work to build the program and,
No, I agree.
and you know,
I
not
agree.
spell
I
out
coach.
double sections, weight room, you know, whatever it is. Just let the coaches figure it out, but there is an expectation and it's a duty of their job to build the program.
I coach 2 varsity sports, and that's just the expectation. I mean, it wasn't listed for mine either, but there's not a varsity coach out there that takes on a varsity coaching program that doesn't think that it has to be year-round. But to your point, it should still be said in there, and it will be.
And correct me, Tom, and some of these sports, they cannot start practicing at a certain time.
No, Lori, that changed ages ago. You're allowed to do it now. I used to have a rule years ago that you could not meet with your kids. That's been gone for a long time.
Oh, well, okay.
And my last point to it all is, if varsity coaches are not meeting the expectations or the requirements of what Tom and administration think are necessary, it's a one-year appointment. We always have the ability to not reappoint people. I mean, that's always there. So you're covered either way.
Correct.
Well, my opinion is this: if you're going to appoint people and hold them to expectations, I think during the reorganizational meeting, you should be appointing them as varsity coaches then, so that they know ahead of time and their expectations are set.
Well, that's a conversation. I mean, that's saying, so let's say for a sport that doesn't start until, oh, no, I mean, I could talk to Jim Dranzak, Randy,
Not that they're going to get paid for it, but at least the expectations are set ahead of time so that they know, like, say, like this coming school year in September, that you're going to be varsity coach for whatever in the spring, that during that whole term, the expectations are going to be set, and that they know that they're going to be, at least say hypothetically in the winter, we get this COVID 2021 and they're out, but they've done this work. At least they know at the end of the year they're going to get paid for it, or at the end of the season.
Yeah, no, I understand. I hear what you're saying. It's kind of the unspoken rule in this district and many other districts that if you're the varsity coach, you're going to keep that position, even though it's a one-year thing, unless you are told you're not going to be by the athletic director, or you retire from it, or you resign, you move, whatnot. And then in that case, he immediately does interviews to try to find, like we went through with football. And then once he does, it gets board approved, and they're told immediately, and then those expectations are there. But I will talk to Jim Dranzak of what you just said, Randy, about making sure that, to see if that's possible, and I believe it should be, to have that done for the reorg meeting. I'll talk to him.
All right, anything else, Christy?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Well, we didn't have a spring sport, so Jim should be all over this, right? No spring sports. Doesn't look like we're gonna have summer sports, so it should be an easy lift for him.
Not much out there.
Okay, anything else, Christy?
No, that was it for me.
All right. Just a couple things I want to bring up. Number one, Tom, and anyone else on administration, but Tom, did we get confirmation from Bethany? I'm assuming that we are now able, and in fact, I guess the question is, are we expected to go back to in-person meetings, or, where are things with that? Because the governor's order only applied for a period of time. So do you know what the status is of that?
I do not, but I will absolutely ask her tomorrow. I'm assuming that we can. I believe that in stage 4 you can have in-person meetings, because remember, you can't guess how many people are going to show up for a board meeting. And so to try to limit that at the door, then you can't do that. We're not doing both. But let me talk to her. And honestly, I believe that the next meeting that we have, well, I say that the next meeting is actually going to be, we got to validate the budget vote. So let me talk to her, Andy, and then I'll let the whole board know tomorrow.
Okay, and I think there's a couple things. It is about whether or not we can, but then it's also a question of whether or not we have to, because if the governor's executive order isn't in effect, which allowed us to do virtual meetings, then that's a whole different thing, right? So, right. And then you brought up the next, which is validating the vote. We don't have something on the calendar since the governor has done such masterful scheduling of the calendar and timeline on this. So when do we need to do that? Pearl, do you have a window within which we need to do that?
If everything goes well tomorrow and we get everything tallied, the board would have to certify within 24 hours. So it would be a meeting probably Wednesday night.
So it could be anytime on Wednesday that we can get a quorum virtually, then we could certify the vote that way, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll follow up with the board after tonight's meeting, just try to check some availability, and we'll schedule it as needed depending on how things go tomorrow with Pearl and the others involved with the vote. That works for everyone.
Okay, sounds good.
And I'll talk more about the voting, the ballot status when I get to my superintendent report.
Okay. And then a reminder for the board that Our bylaws have a clause in there about running for president or vice president of the board, so we're at that window. So by this Friday, if you would intend to run for president or vice president, you're supposed to let Pearl know. You are encouraged to let the entire board know, but you are required to let Pearl know. So if anyone has that intent, I'd let her know by end of day Friday. And that's all I have. I'll open it up to the rest of the board for any topics they want to bring up. All right, being none, I'll turn it over to Mr. Colabufo for the superintendent's report.
All right, so I just want to start right out by saying, I mean, I have spoken to, no joke, no less than 120 community members regarding the ballots and their concerns, and Pearl has been amazing through it as well. There's been a great frustration of people wanting to know why they didn't get ballots, and a whole bunch of other things. I had those conversations, good conversations, lengthy conversations, because it's my job to take those conversations. I think the biggest frustration is overall that we're seeing is the great number of votes that are just going to be invalidated. Invalidated because people just aren't used to taking absentee ballot voting. I'm personally going to go right out and say I think it's a joke that people like myself can go do shopping for Tuesday food distribution, but yet, and I can go in there and people can go into stores or people can go in and mass gatherings, but we can't have in-person voting. So we've had a substantial, a higher number of people vote. Okay, that's great. But the problem is, since people weren't used to it, a lot of them didn't use the actual envelope that you're supposed to put your ballot into that actually has your name and whatnot. So then Pearl can check to see if they are one of the 15,000 eligible voters. And she does that because there's a list that comes from the school board, the Board of Elections and whatnot. Well, we had to invalidate many ballots because they just put their ballot in the postal one, so there's no names or anything at all. So I think that there's going to be frustration of people wanting to know why their vote didn't count. And again, that's not the district's fault. We were clear in saying, okay, you know, you're going to be getting the envelope, you're going to put it in this envelope, you're going to send it back in. We experienced some difficulties. I know I had talked about one of the post office within the district just had a bin, and they were saying people put it in the bin. These are things that when we found out, we put the kibosh to right away because many people aren't used to this massive absentee ballot voting. The speculation is that in July, districts that had their budgets voted down will be able to do an in-person one. If that's the case, my recommendation as superintendent is put the same budget back up and put it out, and people will come in and vote. It's unfortunate that many of the votes won't be able to be counted because the process just wasn't followed. I want to give Pearl massive amount of credit and her patience. She's been literally 6:30 in the morning to about 8:30 at night with this process. And I'm talking to other superintendents, and they're all struggling. They're getting people in their community are getting ballots from neighboring districts and the whole 9 yards. We had community members call me up and say, Tom, my kids moved away 4 years ago. Why are they still getting ballots? Why are they listed on the board of Board of Election? So it was thrust upon us very quickly by the governor. And then there was other massive confusion when people didn't realize that they couldn't bring their votes in right up in person until the 16th. I put it out there, but again, if people don't have any kids in the district and they don't look at our website, they don't get my blasts. They're not looking at the website. They didn't know that the governor said, no, for whatever reason, absolutely not. We can't even accept in-person ones after 5 p.m. on June 9. So there were so many things thrown at everybody. I want to again just say Pearl has been phenomenal through this. I have no problem up until, honestly, the calls from community members come, I take them till about 9:30 at night. And when I'm done talking to them, they have a better understanding. They're just very frustrated right now, and they wanted to vent, and that's my job. So the ballot process, it is what it is. I stand by our original decision to go out with the $72 on a $100,000 house. We still don't know what the governor is going to be doing, but we do know there's going to be substantial cuts to aid, and we're doing everything we can to counter that. In the conversations, when I was asked by community members about this, they appreciated it. We have a great community. So I wanted to really talk about that right now, about the whole ballot confusion. It's not because of Pearl. It's not because of the district.
But Tom, for you or Pearl, I know obviously we haven't tallied votes yet, but do we have an idea of the number of ballots that have been returned?
I've checked in with Pearl, and as of this morning, I believe Pearl said there was approximately 3,400. Normally, we have 1,000.
And how many, but do you have a count of how many of those were valid?
34. Oh, yeah, there was a lot more than that. But Pearl, go ahead. I don't want to
Okay.
speak for you.
Yeah, we did not count the ballots that, of course, that were put in the wrong envelopes because we don't know who they're from. There were about 65 of those. So they, of course, they didn't go into the count. And I spoke a little too high, I think, Tom, because when I counted what's been in the computer, I went through with Kim, it's about 3,100.
Okay.
So only about 65 were invalidated, you said, Pearl?
That's only the ones that were put in the business reply envelope. There were oath envelopes that were not signed. We were told those will, of course, be put aside. There were some people that didn't fill out the front, but they signed the back, but you can't even read their signature. So, and I really don't have on all of those.
I was just trying to get a sense of how many were invalidated.
Yeah, I can count tomorrow, but I don't have.
No, I don't need you, Pearl. I don't need you to count. I just didn't know
Oh.
if you had an estimate yourself.
Would you say 100 or 200, Pearl, for whatever reason can't be counted because they weren't done correctly?
I would say it's definitely probably over 100. It's more like 150, maybe even more.
Okay. Yeah, you don't need to count, Pearl.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, Tom, in the superintendent's report?
Well, again, I just wanted to touch upon the whole graduation, and I want to thank the governor again for his last minute. I'm just going on the record here. Last minute executive orders about making it 150. Again, there were a lot of parents that were very upset, very angry. I want publicly to say, if anybody has a Yahoo email and you have not yet whitelisted us, please check your spam. We did have a staff member about 4 months ago clicked on one of those phishing things, and so Yahoo wasn't recognizing any of our district email. Arena has been working diligently to try to rectify that situation. But I know that there were people on Facebook not saying wonderful things about me that I wasn't getting back to them. So I literally just took screenshots and texted it to them with my work phone, and they were very appreciative. And we had great conversations. But the fact is, I want to give massive kudos to Kristen Enright and her team for putting on what is going to be a phenomenal graduation ceremony in lieu of being able to have the traditional one. So we're very excited. It is going to be very long for any of the board members that do want to come the entire time now that you can, because the 150 rule, really that just allows us to be able to have as many staff members do practicing social distancing as possible. We didn't want to separate this into 5 or 6 different sessions, ceremonies. There were students that said that they've already feel that it's kind of divisiveness right now going on, and they don't want to have, what are you going to graduate with? People, your friends, A through F, and then G through whatever, and then what? It just, that made no sense. I'm very happy that we'll be able to have family members there. We did a rehearsal. One of our students, Kaylee's son, is going to Air Force Academy, and it was great she can have some of her relatives there and kind of do the run through. So I'm going to be pretty excited about it. The sound system sounded great. I think it's the best plan given a horrible situation, and I take no credit for that. That is 100% Kristen Enright and her team.
Tom, I just had one follow-up about that I meant to ask you the other day, but we originally, the plan was for 8, right? For 8 family members or 2 cars?
Yes.
Is that still the case?
It is, because now that we put it out to teachers, there were a lot of parents that said, this is garbage. They should be able to see their teachers and whatnot. So now that we put that out, there are going to be teachers there as well. And it's too hard to police to then say to some families, bring 5 cars or 6 cars. We've already been given warning that we know that there are going to be people watching us. New Hartford has theirs shut down twice, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that we are following the plan that I had already approved, and I already had approved, and we're not going to deviate from that with risk of being shut down.
Okay.
So sorry to be facetious, Tom, but it's hard not to in this day and age. If we just served a meal, then I would think we could seat half capacity in the stadium, right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, but that's the thing that I get frustrated with. There were people calling me up saying, Tom, there's more people out protesting. There's this, there's that. People are okay with that. And I have to bring them back to the executive plan and unfortunately let them know we still have to follow the executive orders. And there's a lot at stake there. If selfishly, if I didn't follow this, Chris Todd had already said he would have to do a Part 83 on me. I would lose my license. Kristen Enright would lose her license. Everybody, every administrator dealing with this would lose their license. We wouldn't be able to work. But then also we're talking about massive funding out of the $47 million of our $81 million budget we would put in jeopardy.
Yep.
But I hear you, Andy, and I feel the same thing.
Couldn't we make it a graduation protest? I'm only kidding.
No comment.
So all kidding aside, I will echo, and Tom, if you could, I'm sure the entire board agrees, which is send massive congratulations and kudos to Kristen and everyone involved, because to your point, there is no good scenario for this. You know, I realize my son is one of those graduates, right? So they're all disappointed to some degree. He thinks it's a great plan, a brilliant plan that they've come up with, and it's about as best as he could hope for in this situation, right? So I am personally thankful, and I'm sure the entire board is. So.
Absolutely, I will do that. Kristen's been beaten up pretty bad on this, and we get it. And I talked to Kristen. We kind of cheer each other up through this because at the end of the day, there are parents that are very, very upset and hurt by all of this. They're very hurt by all of this, and as a result, they're frustrated, and we get that, and they're human. So our job as administrators, hers being one of the most visible positions next to the superintendent, that it's our job. People are venting. They're good people, and we're going to continue to take those phone calls.
Yep. All right. Anything else other than your son in the superintendent's report?
Yeah, I'm really stumped. I locked the door. I think he picked it. Yeah.
Hey,
He's got a future.
Listen,
exactly.
Autism is a beautiful thing. Okay.
All good. We love seeing them. All right. Well, with that, then we can move into our last section here, which is items for discussion and action. I'll make a motion for item H1, the approval of the first reading of proposed district policies. Can I get a second?
Second.
McCarthy, second.
Loye beat you, Mr. McCarthy. So second by Mr. Loye. Any discussion on the first reading? All right, there being none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Oh, never mind. Hold on. Answer when you're ready.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, Mrs. Fishman. What happened? Christy? We'll come back to her. Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yeah.
Mr. Loye?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
And now we'll go back to Mrs. Fishman.
It appears as though she may be gone. They have lost signal.
Yes, so Pearl, we're gonna have to note that as a abstain or whatever technical difficulties on Mrs. Fishman. I don't know how you do that, but that's why you get massive board clerk money, so.
She may be back. Christy, be back.
Maybe, she's dialing in through her phone, so we'll give her just a second here.
Can she just give us a thumbs up or down?
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
she
no, the
can
question.
hear us. This is normally the time where we should be nominating her for some voluntary position, and she doesn't get the right to say no.
Huh.
You there, Christy?
Board president's open.
It's true. It's very true. She's trying. We'll give it 5 more seconds. Christy, can you hear us now? You're muted.
Yes. Yes.
That's a yes to voting on H1?
Yes.
Thank you. It is unanimous. Woo! That was the longest vote we've ever had. Not really, but
I apologize. My phone died.
no, that's fine. I'll make a motion to approve item H2, the approval for the 20/2021 food and cafeteria supplies bid. Can I get a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Mr. Loyer beat you to the punch again. Any discussion?
And I even paused.
I know.
I only have a question, more out of curiosity. Does anybody know if that'll affect the compostable materials that we get? The board had a presentation on a few months back.
I don't think that it will, but I will check on that and I will let you know tomorrow when I talk to Dave Bartholomew.
Copy, thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion on H2? All right, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yeah.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous. I'll make a motion for item H3, approval of the resolution for the 2020-2021 cooperative purchasing bid. Can I get a second?
Second.
Christie got that one. Any discussion? All right. Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
It's unanimous. And I'll make a motion to accept item H4, approve the resolution for the 2020-21 generic bid. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loyer. We'll open up for discussion and I'll start the discussion. And I apologize, Maureen, because I'm pretty sure I asked this last year, maybe the year before that too, and I just cannot remember. Help calm my procurement side jitters about approving a bid that is non-specific. What's to keep us from being obligated to participate in anything that city bids?
It's for us. If somewhere along the way, all of a sudden I need them to do a truck bid or we want to buy a piece of equipment, it's for us to be able to have them do specialty bids at our request. It's not for them.
Okay, so outside of H2 and 3 or any specifics we would do, they can't obtain the bid responses without you soliciting it from them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. I thought it was something like that. I just wanted to make sure.
They know which ones we participate in, and those are the ones that we just approved. And then we just do a generic one because in case something comes up through the year that we need them to do a bid.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Any other discussion? All right. Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Yeah.
Thank you. A couple quick reminders. So I will send out an email to everyone about availability for a quick meeting to approve the budget vote. That would be on Wednesday at some point. And I'll probably just pick a 15-minute window, maybe in the morning, and a 15-minute window at night, just see where we can get the majority of people based on what Pearl would suggest. And other than that, our next scheduled meeting is July 6th, which will be our reorg meeting. And between now and then, Tom will let us know, but in all likelihood, we'll be meeting in person. So with that, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loyer. Any discussion? Being none, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood? And Mr. Hoyt?
Yeah.
All right. Have a great night, everyone, and we will see you on Wednesday for those that can make whatever we decide on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Cabinet.
Good night.
Awesome work.
Yep.
Take care.
Good night, all.
Good night.